Good evening, everyone. If you're in North America, but if you're in Israel, good morning. I'm Mayor Weinstein with the Never Again Live Show, and Baruch Ben Yosef is joining me live from Har Bayit from the Temple Mount. It's Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel Independence Day, 75 years. It's a miracle. I'm just going to ask everyone who's going to be watching, viewing, if you could please share this on the various platforms that you use. We'll reach a lot more people. I'll just give it a moment before we're going to start.
בוקר טוב, בואו בבקשה. חבר'ה, בוקר טוב, חג שמח. אני אסביר את הכללים בעננית בתוך שטח הר הבית, אנחנו ניכנס ולודים על איזה שומרים. יש פה מישהו פעם ראשונה שעולה?
Okay.
Okay, the policeman now is admonished. Yeah.
Tell me, what is going on right now as you're getting ready to go up to Har Bayit?
Okay, the policeman here, when you see here, is now warning everybody about what you're not allowed to do. You know, as usual, you can't pray, you can't tear your clothes, you can't bow down, you can't do any ritual, you can't pick anything up, you can't do anything except maybe breathe. You're allowed to breathe.
Can we have a table set up where we could have Sparm there and we could be learning?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what he's saying. It's ridiculous, you know. As I've shown you every week, he admonishes us not to do this, not to do that, and once we're up there, we do exactly the opposite.
Right.
I know I sent a letter to the minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, the minister of Internal Security,
Right.
telling him that he has to stop this procedure because it's ridiculous. I mean, everybody knows we're praying up there, and what right do they have to warn us not to when they're allowing us to pray for years already? And
Right.
I haven't gotten a response back yet. I assume he's not going to respond because he tries to be very politically correct, unfortunately. But
Right.
it's totally ridiculous. I mean, it's more than ridiculous. It's like from Franz Kafka, the whole thing. You know,
Right.
like a Kafka story.
Right.
So, but yeah, you can see the crowd, very big crowd today, much more than usual.
Right.
People taking advantage of the holiday and trying to make a statement, obviously, that you know, on Israel Independence Day, that this is a sign of our independence. In fact, I would say that after I do this walk around the Temple Mount, the Torah class, I
Yep.
plan on coming back up to say Hallel. Hey, Hallel, because I'm only going to say Hallel from now on the Temple Mount, because it's the only place really where I feel like we're making, you know, like we're making inroads, showing our sovereignty over the land. Things are improving, whereas in the rest of the country, things are going downhill, as we've seen
Right.
over the past few months of how the anarchists and extreme left have basically taken over the country, and the police and the courts and you know, all the authorities just you know, just allow them to do whatever they want. And even unfortunately, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of Internal Police, fights for their right to, you know, as if it's freedom of speech to be a traitor and want to destroy your country, you know?
Right.
It's just totally ridiculous. I mean, that's what Rabbi Kahane used to teach us, right? You don't
Yeah.
let Nazis talk. You bash them in the face.
Yeah.
They have no freedom of speech. So I'm saying I'm very, very, yeah.
There was, you know, yesterday, Yom HaZikaron, and you had these leftist organizations. They had their own memorial service,
Right.
joint
Right.
with Jews and Arabs from the territories who talk about the so-called Nakba,
Right.
their desire to destroy Israel, and that we should mourn over their victims, their casualties in that war where they wanted to eliminate the Jewish people. And somehow this is their statement of peace. And apparently the Minister of Defense, he said, hang on, you need my permission, anyone who's coming in. If they're coming in for a work permit, we review it. He said, this is not work related. I'm not granting a permit to them to come in. The Supreme Court overruled him. What's the point of having a defense minister?
Yes, sir. You're right. 100% right. The whole thing is outrageous. I mean, these people, not only potential terrorists, but who are they coming? They're coming to remember terrorists who have been killed when our forces killed them in the line of duty. They killed terrorists, and they're coming to memorialize these terrorists. I mean, it's unbelievable. Where in the world would you have such a crazy thing?
Absolutely.
Right before the Memorial Day started, I'm sure you saw the movie clips of the terror attack in the middle of Jerusalem, right by the Machane Yehuda.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Here's exactly my point. Okay, you have an Arab who lives in a neighborhood that is a part of Jerusalem, and he has a car that has an Israeli license plate.
Yeah.
And he turns the car into a weapon. Yeah. That's his weapon of choice, the car. See, if I was in charge here, no Arab would be allowed to drive any cars. It'd be illegal because they're all potential terrorists who will use their cars, and it's not the first time. It's not the first time. It keeps repeating itself, but nobody wants to deal with the problem. So here we are, people getting maimed, and so far nobody died from this attack. My son Asher lives right over there by the his apartment overlooks exactly where it happened. He was on his terrace, filming it as it went down. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. Wow. And it's not a wake up call for anybody. It's just okay. Just keep going on. Like nothing changes.
Right.
Nothing changes. So here we are. Let's get into the spirit of things here. Again, look.
Baruch, I got a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. I remember Rabbi Nachman Kahana, he mentioned this to me a number of years ago. So on Yom HaTzmaut, they give the count of how many Jews live in Israel, what the population of Israel is, and they just came out with a count of Jews, 7,100,000 plus. So it's going up. So my question is, there's different demographers that are saying how many Jews actually live in the world, what the world Jewish population is. There's a Pew population study that came out about 10 years ago that shocked the Jewish world to show that Jews in North America, in particular in the United States, are in serious decline. Huge intermarriage, also a deficit when it comes to birth. For Jews there, the number is going down, and the number was around 6 million. And now all of a sudden you have some demographers that are trying to raise it. Whoever identifies as a Jew is good enough for them. But according to Jewish law, that doesn't wash. So they're saying that there's over 15 million Jews in the world, but the truth really is probably maybe around 5 million Jews in the States, if that even. So when there's a clear majority of Jews living in Israel, and I believe there is already now, but when there is a clear majority of Jews living in Israel, are there any changes in Jewish law in Israel pertaining to the Beis Mikdash, services?
Well, there are. I'll answer that question.
Yep.
I have basically two answers to that question. There are rabbis who have written that it needs a Jewish majority. The majority of Jews have to live in the land for certain things to happen. And when that happens, for instance, like you said, to build a temple, to make the land holy again for the Sabbath, the the Shemitah, the sabbatical year, um, certain things, certain public commandments. Yossi Dayan, our friend, once pointed out that one of the famous rabbis is the rabbi who wrote the Chinuch, the book called the
Mhm.
Chinuch, where when he talks about appointing a king, he doesn't say that you need a majority of Jews to live in the land, whereas to build a temple you do. Okay, so that's basically those opinions. My opinion is that that's not true. That's not the case. As we saw
Mhm.
in the time of the Second Temple, I mean,
Right.
42,000 Jews came back with Ezra and Nehemiah. Just look it up.
Right.
You can see it.
Right.
Open it up.
Right.
If you learn Bible, you can see it. It's right there. 42,000. Those
Mhm.
42,000 that came back, that came to Israel, back to the land from Babylon, were basically, for the most part, intermarried Jews,
Yep.
not very holy Jews, not the scholars, and they rebuilt the Second Temple.
Mhm.
And they were not the majority of the Jews, and they were not the holiest Jews, and were not the smartest Jews, but they rebuilt the Second Temple.
Right.
So to me, you know what? I have a certain way of thinking, right? The reality is,
Yep.
that this is what happened then,
Yep.
and if that's what happened then this is what should happen now. It should be
Right.
no connection whatsoever to
Right.
where the majority of Jews are. And the question also, we've discussed this in the past amongst the rabbis that I've learned with, is now how do you, again, like you said, how do you count who's a Jew and how do you count them and so on?
Yep.
And there are all kinds of Jews who are probably halakhically Jewish and they don't even know they're Jewish.
Mhm.
Especially when a Gentile man marries a Jewish woman, and they raise, and I have relatives like that were raised as non-Jews, and I
Yep.
and I and I told them, I said, under Jewish law, you're really Jewish, and they did not want to hear that. It didn't
Right.
sit well with them,
Mhm.
and so the bottom line is that there are opinions that basically say we can only have to count the people that are in the land because we can't count the people outside the land. We have no idea of who really is a Jew and not a Jew, and how
Right.
they're counted, and so on. I mean, in Israel, they can they can more or less figure it out through the government agencies of how many people there really are and how many are really Jewish. So that's my take on it.
Right.
You know, obviously we want the Jews throughout the exile to come back as quickly as possible, and as many as possible. But you know what? If we count the 10 tribes that got lost, there are probably hundreds of millions of Jews out there somewhere.
Right.
You know
Right.
that, and there are people like that that claim that they're part of the 10 tribes and they want to come back, whether they're in
Yep.
Afghanistan or they're in Africa or they're in Asia, wherever they
Mhm.
are. They claim that they were part of the 10 tribes. There are Jews in Israel that claim they're like from the tribe of Manasseh or the tribe of Dan,
Mhm.
all kinds of tribes,
Right.
and no one knows for sure if they are or they aren't. But that's another reality that has to be taken into account. The state of Israel has shown that it's not really interested in bringing back the 10 tribes.
Right.
Okay, but yeah, that's another story for another
Mhm.
time. So I hope I answered the question as best as I could.
I think you did.
Okay. So here we are. We're on the eastern side of the Temple Mount. Next to right here is the eastern wall. Next to us here on our right. To the left of
Right.
us, is where the temple stood. Um, Here's their getting ready to pray the morning service. They already started praying.
Mhm.
As I said, the whole thing is like, it's like the Twilight Zone. You know what I'm saying? It's unbelievable.
Right.
Only a few minutes ago, the cop warned us not to pray in here. Everybody's praying.
Right.
Okay, wait a second. Let me get by here because I don't want to bother the people while they're praying.
Yeah.
Let me get through. Kadosh, 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 Anai Tzilot Mechor. Baruch Kevod Anai Mekomo. Loch Anai Olam Like Shem Davador Halia. Baruch Shem Kevod Machoto Leolam Vaed. Okay, so we just did Kedusha with the minyan. I'm going to get away a little bit so I don't bother them. Here. We're here now. In front of us here is obviously we're facing now where the temple stood, the altar,
Mhm.
and the women's court. It's all in front of us.
Right.
And the only thing that's in our way is that building with the gold dome on it. Okay.
Right.
Maybe some Arab friend of ours will decide to take it and put it in Mecca where it belongs. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
Okay. So this week we have a double portion again. Acharei Mot Kedoshim. Okay, these are portions Rabbi Kana love to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
The obviously Acharei Mot deals with it says after the death of the two sons of Aaron,
Right.
and it talks about the service of Yom Kippur. So it's very interesting that when we think of Yom Kippur, what do we think of? We think of fasting and
Mhm.
being in synagogue all day, right? That's basically Yom Kippur. But Yom Kippur, when you look in the Torah in this week's portion, you see a whole different story. The whole Yom Kippur service is in the temple, and
Mhm.
it revolves around the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, and he does service outside of the Holy of Holies and inside the Holy of Holies. And the interesting thing is that he removes his clothes. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would wear 8 garments, including that were had in gold, and he would remove them several times and wear white clothes to go inside the Holy of Holies. Okay, and the reason for that, we're told, is that um, the gold relates to the golden calf, and obviously, since we sinned at the golden calf, that the gold is like it's like a prosecutor, and we want a defense attorney to win for us. And so he doesn't wear gold; he wears white, very simple, plain white clothes, pure clothes, and he goes to the Holy of Holies, the only time of the year that the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies, and there he would sprinkle blood from the sacrifices, and that was the service. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, going inside the Holy of Holies, coming out, doing the offering incense on the altar, reading the Torah. He would send, of course, the famous 2 goats. One goat he would offer as a sacrifice. The other goat he would send out to the desert, and the goat would be thrown off a cliff in the desert, going east from the Temple Mount. The whole service, anybody who wants to read it can open up the Bible, and he'll see the service of the high priest on Yom Kippur, and that's the real service. And the interesting thing, Mayor, is that one of the main reasons for the high priest service on Yom Kippur is to receive atonement for the priests that might have been impure when they were serving inside the temple. And so it's very interesting that people say, you can't go into the Temple Mount because you're impure. Yet we see here that an entire service in Yom Kippur it revolves around the idea that we have to purify ourselves and we have to atone ourselves if we, God forbid, were in a state of impurity when we were in the Temple Mount. Meaning that we know that it could happen, we know that it's a reality, and there's a procedure for our atonement. So the whole idea that we can't go in the Temple Mount because we're impure is so ridiculous and so convoluted that it's beyond understanding. Okay, we're now moving forward, going north again. After they finish the service, morning service, and now we're walking north again. So beyond the service on Yom Kippur, the portion of Acharei Mot talks about other things related to the temple. For instance, the idea that when we were in the desert, after we left Egypt, so we came into the land of Israel, of course we had the tabernacle, the Mishkan,
Yep.
that we were commanded to build, and it was in the desert, and there we would offer the sacrifices. And one of the obligations was that a person who wanted to eat meat in the desert, and he had an animal that had no blemishes on it, it was worthy of bringing as a sacrifice, had to bring the animal as a sacrifice. He didn't have the right to do like today, where people have a shochet, and could slaughter an animal anywhere he wanted. No, he had to bring it specifically as a sacrifice, to the point where it says that if a person didn't bring the animal as a sacrifice, and he slaughtered the animal outside the temple, it is considered murder, like he murdered a person. That's how serious it was. And it's like, I mean, just to think about that idea, that concept, it's really amazing. And it shows really also how, people talk about sacrifices, animal sacrifices being cruel and it's primitive. It's really the opposite. It's like today the slaughtering animals just to eat them with no spiritual significance. That's primitive and barbaric and cruel when you think about it. Okay, the temple raised the level, the spiritual level. חוויה, טוב, אז תעתור לבן גביר, אולי הוא יעזור לך. Some guy's complaining that I'm talking in English. He can't deal with it. So we have here this concept that killing the animal outside the tabernacle is considered like murder. And then, of course, after Acharei Mot, we have the portion of Kedoshim, where we're told that we have to be a holy nation.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, the people of Israel are a special nation, a chosen nation, and for that reason, we have to be a holy nation. Can't just be like everybody else, right? That's really, when you think about it, when you get down to it, the whole movement that they have now going on for the leftists and the anarchists is not really because they care about democracy. They could care less about democracy. Their whole the entire movement is because they don't want a Jewish state. They don't want a state that's holy. They don't want people that are holy to run the state. They want us to be like every other state, or as Rabbi would call it, a Hebrew-speaking Portugal.
Right.
And that's really what's going on. A lot of people talking about that, but obviously the people behind the demonstrations are trying to hide that point. So what do? Very intelligently, they hand out to everybody Israeli flags. So we're not the enemy. We're pro-Israel. We're just against these guys who are trying to take away our democracy.
Yeah.
It's obviously totally ridiculous. If anything, the right wing is trying to improve the democracy, not take it away. I mean, I don't think there's any hope for the legal system in Israel. I think it's totally corrupt and it has to be totally undone and start from scratch. But some people think that they can fix it. So, well, fine. So fine, try to fix it. But the left of these anarchists don't even want to allow it to be fixed, like as if it's such a great system. You know,
Mhm.
a system where cases go on for years and years. Like look at the Netanyahu case. Okay,
Yep.
I mean, I assume now Trump is being put on trial in New York.
Yep. Yep.
I assume that he's going to have a speedy trial, right?
Yep.
The
Yep.
trial's not going to go on for years. He's going to get a fair trial, and it's going to be speedy. I assume he'll get a fair trial, right? But
Mhm.
Netanyahu's trial, he'll probably be dead by the time the trial's over, because it's going to drag on so long. Like what goes on in this country, there's no concept of a speedy trial here, and it's going on for 3 years late already. Out of the over 300 prosecution witnesses, they've only cross-examined 40 of them. So I mean, it's just unbelievable. Just figure out, just do the mathematics. You'll see it's
Yeah.
and that's not even including the defense. The
Yeah.
whole case is falling apart at the seams. If you follow the case, it's falling
Yeah.
apart at the seams. The whole thing's frivolous, and it just keeps going on. Like there's no way to stop it. You know, you can't. The attorney general is basically is the only one that could stop the case, and she's not going to stop it because she was appointed for that whole purpose,
Right.
not to allow it to stop. That's attorney general. I mean, instead of coming in immediately and firing her, okay,
Yeah.
because she was a political appointee to make sure that the right wing couldn't rule. You know, she's just going on as usual, and she has no qualms about doing everything against the government. It's just incredible here. It's you know, Rabbi Khan had great names for this state. You know, the
Yeah.
state of Helm, the Oilam Goyim. It's unbelievable. Just it never ends. It never ends. Uh, so anyhow, we're supposed to be a holy nation,
Mhm.
and to be a holy nation, it requires all kinds of things that the portion of the Kedoshim deal with. It mentions a whole bunch of uh, of rituals that we need to do, that we shouldn't look like the Gentiles, like the whole idea of shaving all your, you know, your sideburns, the side locks, um, you know, maiming yourself over the dead, all kinds of things that in the ancient world were done by by the by the by the Gentile nations. We were told not to do because we're a holy people. And unfortunately, I tell you, one of the things that we're told not to do is to have tattoos. Okay, and I remember even my father. You remember my father? You met him, and blessed memory. He was in the American Navy, in the U.S. Navy, and he told me as a kid, and he was not a religious man, but he told me as a kid. I remember growing up, he would say to me, he says, you know, I was in the Navy. Everybody had tattoos except me. He said because Jews don't put tattoos on their body. I mean, he not even a religious man, but he knew that that you know there's something special about the Jews, and they don't put tattoos on their body. You know, isn't that amazing? So
I see that happening more and more now.
what more and more what that there are tattoos or not tattoos?
Yes. Yes, that there are. Yeah.
That's terrible. I see it. I see it here in Israel, and it disgusts me. So you know, and they're all over the place. These tattoo parlors.
Yeah.
And you say to yourself, I mean, you know, they do everything possible, and a lot of them, unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with the Russian Aliyah.
Mhm.
I hate to say it, but the Russian Aliyah, after the original Olim that we fought for back in the 70s to get
Yep.
out of Russia, who are basically Zionists and proud Jews, the Russian Aliyah since then has basically since the 90s, I would say, has been a majority of non-Jews who have some kind
Wow.
of connection to the Jewish people, a grandfather or something like that. They want to change that law that they shouldn't have the right to come because the grandfather was Jewish,
Mhm.
and they call it the grandfather law. They want to
Right.
change that, and but you ask any real Russian Jew, and he'll tell you he knows they know the difference between the Jews and the non-Jews. I'll tell you a funny story about that. I had back in about 20 years ago. I had a client who was from Russia, and he brought me to a couple that wanted to get divorced, and they weren't Jewish. And in Israel, there's a whole crazy procedure that exists from the time of the British mandate.
Right.
That when there's a case of two people that have different religions, the Supreme Court, the president of the Supreme Court has to decide which court has jurisdiction to hear the case.
Hmm.
So in this case, the woman was some kind of Russian Orthodox or something Christian, and the guy, he said, "Look, I don't have any religion. I, I grew up a communist or something like that." Okay, but both of them claimed they weren't Jewish, and the court had to decide. And the court was trying to verify that none of them were Jewish, and they wanted witnesses that knew them. So I contacted the guy who sent them to me, and I asked him to come down and sign an affidavit that he knows that they're not Jewish. So he comes and I said, "But tell me the truth. How do you know none of them are Jewish? Because if they're Jewish, the court that has the jurisdiction is the rabbinical court." Um, so he says to me, "Listen, I'm not a religious person, but I know that real Jews, can only eat a pork up to a certain point, and then after a certain point, their soul can't take it anymore." I said, "These people, there's nothing in their soul I see that's Jewish. They're." I was an amazing explanation, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "Wow." He said, "Yeah, I'm willing to testify they're not Jewish. I know from the way they act, there's no chance that they're Jewish." And this was a non-religious person, but I'm saying to you, these Russians know who's Jewish and who isn't Jewish,
Right.
and they tell you that probably 80% of the Olim, the immigrants that come from Russia these days, are not Jewish.
Wow.
And of course they get benefits by coming here. Remember back in the 90s when there was the big Aliyah from Russia, in the early 90s, the Prime Minister of Israel was Yitzhak Rabin,
Hmm.
and they had a big interest in bringing these Russians to Israel because they weren't because they wanted to offset the growing size of the religious and Haredi
Right.
communities. So the leftists, were not having kids at the rate that the religious were and the right wing were. So they want to bring in all of these, these Russians, but they were bringing in non-Jewish Russians, and it kind of backfired on them because most of these Russians, even if they weren't Jewish, they were right wing, like Lieberman's party, okay,
Right.
Victor Lieberman's party, Yisrael Beitenu, is made up of probably mostly non-Jewish Russians who are right wing. Unfortunately, their hatred of the religious is so great that he decided, he took his party of like 6 seats, which are close to 200,000 people, and he turned it over to the left and the Arabs, because of the hatred to the religious is so great. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Right.
It's mind-boggling. It's unbelievable. He was the Minister of Defense of the
Right.
State of Israel, the second most important position in the government.
Yeah.
I mean, what more do you want? And because he had to compromise with the Haredim about the enlistment of the soldiers, the draft of the soldiers, he toppled the government and caused this whole a mess that we had over the past few years of every few months a new election.
Right.
And you say to yourself, what is the guy? I mean, is the guy out of his mind? I mean, the hatred is so great that he would do that. I mean, But that's again, Rabbi Kana would say, of course, it makes a lot of sense. The hatred is so great for the religion, and they want to be like the Gentile world, that they'll do
Right.
crazy things
Right.
like that. Forfeit the position that the guy fought for to get, and he could have done so many good things in that position, but instead he preferred to. And what did he gain out of it? I mean, as if the Haredi the Shiva students are going to be drafted. I mean, come on, be serious. So now they're talking about making a new law where they're basically exonerated from reporting to the army. They're lowering the age of the draft to I think like 23 or something. I mean, it's like unbelievable. I can't. You couldn't write a crazier story than what goes on here.
Right.
That's how crazy it is. Okay, now we're on the western side of Temple Mount. Here's the Dome of the Rock that sits on the place of the temple. Like I said, we hope will end up in Mecca.
Yep.
And over to our right is where the western wall is. So we see here we're in the spot between the western wall that Herod built and the real western wall, which is over here. I've pointed that out in the past.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new attempt again. Always every few years there's an attempt to make a claim that really the Herod's western wall is the real western wall, and where the Dome of the Rock is where the altar was, and the temple would sit somewhere over here. It was just totally ridiculous. But people write books and make claims like that, and they probably have, all of them have some kind of political purpose to it. Like years ago when Ehud Barak was the prime minister back in '99, and he
Yep.
wanted to he was going to the Y plantation, I believe it was, with
Right. With Clinton.
with Clinton, and he offered the Arabs, you take the top of the Temple Mount, and the Jews will take under the Temple Mount. And where did that all come from? Because there was an architect named Tuvia Sagiv who came up with this whole idea that what's on top of the Temple Mount is irrelevant. The temple was really much lower. This was all built on, and we really need what's underneath. And this and somehow this idea got to Barak. So, well, this is great. What could be better? Give the Arabs the top, and we'll keep the bottom. But even that didn't fly with the Arabs. That's it. Doesn't matter what the Jews do. I mean, they always have this imagination that they can come up with some kind of crazy idea to make peace with the Arabs, and and I always say, I mean, come on, be serious. You can make a peace with a nation that a guy gets in his car and drives into a bunch of people by the marketplace. The guy probably didn't even think about it much before he did it. That's the way Arabs act.
And what about Barak? What about the other case? A Jordanian member of parliament tried to get into Israel using his immunity,
right?
And he's carrying weapons, lots of weapons, and gold to give to who? Who are you giving the weapons to, and who are you giving the gold to? So
obviously, we wanted to help the Jews, obviously.
right, to help us build the temple. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the position of the Jordanian government? Yeah, right. What's the position?
Well, their position is they shouldn't have arrested him. They have to release him. He has diplomatic immunity.
Yeah. And he's got a right to bring in weapons. Yeah.
It never ends. I'm telling you, it never ends. I don't know how it's going to play out, but we need very quickly, a king. We need the Mashiach real fast, because things are out of control here, and there is there's no government. There's no. That's where we stand. We have a race against time. Rabbi Kanish has always told us there is no time.
Right.
And we can't, because of the matters of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem, the sanctification of God's name, or the desecration of His name, we need to act fast. We have no time to sit back and wait for things to happen. And
Right.
here we are. At least I'm here with some really good Jews. Yeah, they're dancing here
Good.
in honor of going up to the Temple Mount on Independence Day. And at least there's hope. There are still some normal Jews left,
Right.
and let's hope that it grows. That there are more and more normal Jews who understand. Here's one normal Jew. What does he have to say about the situation?
I say we have only Hashem to rely on.
There you go. You heard it from him.
Okay.
He's a regular Temple Mount person, and we have more and more Jews like him and the people that went up with us, and that's where we stand here on Independence Day, the 75th Independence Day of the State of Israel, and we'll see what happens. So.
Well, I would say, I would add to that, Baruch, that, it's a miracle that the state of Israel came into being. Against all odds, outnumbered, outgunned, outflanked, everything. And, and we survived and we built the state. The Jewish people built the state. This is the time, and Rabbi Kahana said, it's God decides the time. And this is the time. And no matter what, and you hear just the craziest things from those on the left, and Ehud Barak and Omert and all these, and Peace Now and all that, New Israel Fund, all these self-haters and who want to destroy, and these protests going on right now. They don't want a Jewish state. But God decides how things are going to be. And the momentum is in the right place. And the futility of that whole movement against the government. What are they proposing? To sterilize the religious community so there's no growth? Like, what are they proposing?
No, they're basically, if in a nutshell, they're followers of their icon Aaron Barak, who was the Chief Justice of Israel for many years, and he created this idea of what's called there's democracy is not a technical political system, but it's a way of life. 1 second, I have to put my phone down for a second. Okay. In other words, it's called substantial. He called it substantial democracy as compared to technical democracy, meaning democracy is not a vote of the majority, a majority decides, but rather it's a belief. It's like a religion. Okay, that's why they said he's basically the guru.
Yeah.
So his idea was that there are, and he would constantly say this, that there are people, what they call in Hebrew, Adam HaNaor, the enlightened man, That's the concept.
Yeah.
And there are people who aren't enlightened, and the unenlightened people have to make themselves subservient to the enlightened. So, for instance, it came out while the whole thing is going on. This woman had written, and this woman obviously she's not right wing. She wrote a biography on Barak, and all of a sudden she came out with this statement that Barak had made to her back when she was writing the book. That she said to him, you really need to appoint a Moroccan judge to the Supreme Court. There never was a Moroccan judge in the Supreme Court. And there's so many Moroccans in Israel. And you should really appoint a Moroccan judge so that people feel that they're part of the system. They're not alienated. And Barak said, if I could only find one.
Yeah, if I could only
find one.
Yeah.
What a chutzpah. What a... And this guy can come across like he's the guru and the democracy. And then when you learn about Barak's life and what he's done, how he used nepotism to get all of his family appointed to big jobs, like his wife as the assistant chief judge of the labor court, and his kid, and then using his position to buy up tremendous amounts of property.
Yeah.
It's like, across the board, the guy is totally crooked. The guy is
Yeah.
a fraud.
Yeah.
And yet they look at him as being some kind of god.
Yeah. And they say you got to prosecute Netanyahu because he got a gift from somebody for cigars.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that the other day it came out that the guy who supposedly gave the cigars and the champagne to Netanyahu,
Yeah.
is really a bigger friend of Yair Lapid, and that Yair Lapid is going to have to testify, and when he testifies, it's going to come out that he's the real criminal, not Netanyahu, but Lapid. But in the meantime, they're going to drag it out. He'll be like the last witness, you know. And by then, like I said, it'll be 10 years from now.
Right.
So now the thing with Aaron Barak is that he has all these. This is a very important point. Okay, back in 1980, Menachem Begin and the government back then legislated a law that said the following: said, being that the laws in the state of Israel are a bunch of hodgepodge laws from the Turkish Ottoman, the British Mandate, is the Knesset, and so they made this following law, which made a lot of sense, saying if there is a question of what applies, and it's not clear by the law that exists of what we're supposed to do, the courts should turn to the court should turn to the Jewish law, the Hebrew law, and from the Hebrew law they should determine what should be the decision. So, and a lot of judges did that. They would refer to the Hebrew law. But Barak never did that, and he was questioned, why haven't you done that? You're supposed to do that. That's the law. You're supposed to do that. And he says, well, I don't know the Hebrew law, so I can't really reflect on it. Here's the head of the Supreme Court of the state of Israel, and admittingly, he says, I don't know Hebrew law.
Yeah.
How can anything be more outrageous than that? And it doesn't matter. Like I said, he can do whatever he wants because he's God. Yeah. And I'm coming in the second time now, second round. A lot of tourists now coming in. Lots of tourists. Unfortunately. Not enough Jews, too many tourists. I'm putting my phone down again. Because I have to go through the checkpoint again. Okay, I'm through again. Here I am. I'm back inside, and then we're going to get admonished again what not to do for a second time. Here's one of our Kohanim here, one of our holy Kohanim.
Good.
And we're back inside, waiting our turn to go up again. I'm sure there's a group already inside, and we're gonna wait till they get out, and then they'll let us in. So I'm gonna have a little sit down here, and you see, but they had us leave early. They shortened our stay inside because they expect a lot of people today. So we were out in less than an hour. Usually, we go over an hour.
Right.
But today we were a lot less than an hour. They didn't let us go on the northern side. Usually let us go up to the top. They didn't let us go up.
Right.
They didn't let us stop on the eastern side where usually the rabbi talks. So maybe now there are less people, and maybe they'll stay longer. I don't know. And like I said, I'm gonna say Hallel. Take the opportunity to say Hallel up there on my second time around. And that's the story. What do you say, Mayor? How do you
Well,
conclude this whole thing?
I think it's, I think I'm impressed that there's a momentum of Jews going up to Har Bayit. We need more, and we need more activities, but there is a momentum. It's going in the right direction. That's how I see it. In the end, look, Rabbi Kahane spoke all over the place, anywhere, and he wrote books and Sfarim. And that's the challenge now. We have to speak, we have to teach, we have to educate the Jewish idea. And what greater opportunity now with all these protests going on? We have to say the truth, because there is absolutely no foundation to what the left is trying to put forward. There's no foundation, and you're either for a Jewish state or you're not for a Jewish state. Even have some people on the left talking about maybe to separate from the state of Israel and have some kind of a state of Tel Aviv. I saw that presentation on I-24 News, in fact, that somebody was talking about that. So it's, our challenges are there, but I don't believe we're. Mhm. You cut out,
something that happened.
right?
So, if you remember, I was a law student at the time, and I filed a petition to the High Court for bringing a Korban Pesach, the Pesach
Right.
offer.
Yeah.
So it went before Aaron Barak. He was the Chief Justice at the time, and
Yeah.
two other judges, including one that I believe is related to Netanyahu. Her name was Shoshana Netanyahu.
Right.
And I prepared myself for the case. I looked up all the case law on it. I knew there were questions of jurisdiction. There were all kinds of technical questions that had to be dealt with in order to
Right.
get into the door, as they say. So I prepared myself with all these, and I had answers to all these questions. And I get there, and I start, he lets me talk, Barak, and I start saying, okay, I want to deal with the question of, does this court have jurisdiction to hear this case or not? And he said, oh no, let's just assume that we have jurisdiction. Okay, so you prepared yourself. Continue. Let's just assume you have jurisdiction. Okay,
Yeah.
right. I was like kind of shocked, because it would have been really easy to toss us out on a jurisdiction issue, but no. Then I said, well, then there's a question of if the court has, even if it has jurisdiction, is it something that is worthy to bring before the court?
Right.
Which is something more less technical, more discretionary. And he said, oh no, let's just assume that that's worthy. It's a worthy issue to bring before the court. Go on. And I couldn't believe it. I was like shocked, like, oh wow, all these things that I prepared for, that I thought would be the problem. Let's go on, one after the other, after the other, after the other. He doesn't even ask the government attorney for her opinion. I'm just going on. So he goes, get to the point. So I got to the point, which the point was that of how important the Korban Pesach is to the Jewish people, and the fact that it would require basically an hour or so out of the entire year, and if you want to have some kind of any kind of fairness, okay, is give us an hour. You give the Muslims, 365 days a year. Give us 1 hour. So how could you even say that it's not reasonable? So he says, very good point. Very good point. He says to the state prosecutor, what do we have to say about that? She started mumbling. She didn't even prepare herself. She knew nothing about the case. She thought it was like some kind of joker came. And Barak saw. So he said, okay, we'll write our answer. And okay, we get the answer. He didn't write it. This other judge wrote it. And
Yeah.
basically he went through all the points, and it was very it looked very good, very promising until he got to the final point. He says, and we really understand the wish of the petitioner, but at the same time, we all know what will happen if we let him do what he wants to do, meaning World War III or who knows what. That was the end of it. But I tried to figure out, why did he let me do that? Why didn't he just toss me out from the beginning?
Yeah.
I realized now that basically, what was Barak trying to say? I don't care what the previous court said. I don't care what the law says. You know, I'm more important than the law and previous case law and all that. So just, ignore it and get to the point. And I was like, it only registered by me now 30 some odd years later when this whole thing's going on. And this is what it is. This is what it is. The man basically is a dictator who megalomaniac.
Yeah.
And these people don't even realize it, and they're fighting for democracy, but they're really, what they're asking for is to be subservient to a dictator.
Yep.
It's all mixed up. It's all.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. That's where we are. So again, more people are coming up, getting ready for the next Aliyah here, and until next week.
Yep. Baruch, thank you very much. We'll do it next week. Excuse me. It's great that we're going back up. The Jews are going back up again after they said no.
2-week hiatus.
Yeah.
Next week we have on Friday, of course, what's called Pesach Sheni.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about that, even though we're not going to be up on Friday, but we'll talk about not only the portion, but Pesach Sheni.
Right.
And the week after that, we have, of course, Lag BaOmer.
Yeah.
And then we have Jerusalem Freedom Day, commemorating the 6-Day War. It'll be 56 years.
Right.
And then we have Shavuot coming up after that. So there are a lot of things happening in the next few weeks, besides the weekly portion.
Yes.
So we'll have a lot to talk about.
Very important. Baruch, thank you very much.
Okay, have a Chag Sameach. Happy Independence Day.
Absolutely. Let me just say one quick thing. On Yom HaZikaron, we say that in all the wars and all the terror attacks, Israel lost 24,231 Jews. And that starts from 1948 to now. And during the Second World War, during the Holocaust, one day alone in Auschwitz, 12,000 Jews were being murdered. So basically, in 2 days, we're 75 years old, Israel, and the sacrifices made, and the number is, I think it's stunning, 24,231 right now, and we have a Jewish state, and it's pretty remarkable.
Well, I want to say something about that. I was just, obviously went to the mikveh before I come to the Temple Mount.
Yep.
And in the mikveh, there was a fight broke out between two guys about the prayer. And one guy, and it was two Haredi guys actually. One Haredi guy says, it's fine to say the Hallel, and the other guy was cursing and spitting. So you don't want to hear about it. It's heresy and da 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 da.
Oh.
So the guy looks at me. The other guy who said, I have no problem saying Hallel. Certainly we shouldn't say Tachanun. So he looks at me and I just shrug my shoulders what are you going to do? And then the guy sees that I put my gun on my belt.
Yeah.
And starts making, oh, you're tough. You got a gun.
Oh.
I said, you know what? I'm not like the Jews that walked into the gas chambers like you, as sheep going to the slaughter. That's not going to happen to me. That'll happen to you because you're a loser. You're like you don't care about sanctifying God's name. You don't care. And the guy is like talking to the wall.
Right.
The
right.
And you know, and that's really sad. It's really sad when you have, you know, a Jew like that who's got a yarmulke on
Yeah.
and tzitzis, and it's just amazing. Like, you know, but if there was no Jewish state, the Irish probably would have slaughtered him by now. And if he
Yeah.
was in the exile, he'd be celebrating the Independence Day of, you know, the U.S. or Canada or
Right, right,
Germany or wherever he was.
right.
I mean, just sick people, sick
Yes.
people.
Yes,
That even that you know, people like that, you know, really unfortunately, give some kind of justification for the leftists who complain about the fact that they don't serve in the army. You know, we have to serve and protect them.
yeah,
It's like someone the other day was saying, who was saying it? I can't remember who was saying it, that really, it was our buddy Shmuel Citron
Yeah.
was saying how, you know, the people that fought in the wars in ancient history, in the ancient history of the Jewish people throughout history, they were all dafka, they were the tzaddikim, the righteous ones, the learned ones. Those are the ones that they wanted to take to war with us, not the riffraff, not the leftists.
right.
It's like again, everything's upside down today. Upside down.
Absolutely.
We're about to go back in again. Here is again admonishing us. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You can make a comedy. You can make a comedy show out of it.
When I get back to Israel, we'll take the podcast to another level.
I was in Mitzvah Navo for Shabbat. Everybody's asking about you.
I heard.
Yeah.
I heard you're there. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you, Baruch.
Yeah, the fact they had me at the Kiddush, I gave a talk about going up to the עכשיו שאני יודע בעל פה מה שאתה אומר, בעל פה. אני יכול להגיד בשינה מה שאתה אומר.
זה לא מעניין אותי.
אוקיי,
אני רוצה שתכבד אותי דקה, אחרי זה אתה יכול
בסדר,
לא.
טוב.
אז אני מבקש, חבר'ה, נשמעים להוראות של השוטרים במקום.
I've been
שוב
warned.
מעגל אבטחה מאוד מאוד חשוב, מאבטחים אתכם מהכניסה ועד ליציאה, עוצרים בדיוק איפה שנותנים לכם לעצור, לא נוגעים ולא מנהגים כלום, לא לקוח שלכם, לא אבנים, לא עפר, לא עצים, שימו לב אם יש ילדים, ושיהיה לכם בוקר טוב.
Okay. He finished talking, now I can talk. So in any event, at the Kiddush, I spoke about going up to the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, you know, Gilad Nepi, the South
Yes.
African, came over to me afterwards, and he says, I can't believe it. He says, I hear what you said, and you know, I'm so used to people telling me you can't go up, it's forbidden. Da, da, da. He says, I never was able to go up. I was so scared. And what you said makes so much sense. And I said, you know what, Gilad, I said, the easiest thing in the world is to say asur, it's forbidden. The easiest thing, you know.
Yep.
You don't have to be an intelligent person or a learned person, but to understand, you know, why and how you can go up and why it's not only permitted but obligated, that requires learning. That requires understanding. I said,
Yep.
That's the problem. He says, my son-in-law says I can't go up. This one says I can't go up. I says, don't worry, you can go up. You just, when you're ready, let me know. It's just unbelievable.
It is.
All right, so
Thank you, Baruch. We'll do it next
All right.
week.
all right, take care.
Bye-bye.